everyone. We have several things to go over today and a really neat article to get to. So I don't want to do too much as far as intros because we're ready to go. We're ready to get going. So let's do that. Let's get going. We have coming up some events coming up. Let me go ahead and I'm going to give you the events that are not the Eden Wellness Alliance and what they're doing, and then I'll give you ours because we have ours planned out for the rest of the year. Okay? So, upcoming this month, I know we have something coming up next week. Let me see. Okay. Yes. So, next week is the 14th. We're going to be having an event that day too, but it's in the morning, so we'll come back to that in a minute. But the one happening in the evening is Essential Oils 101 Life Empowered. And it's going to be with Jacqueline Spain, and the host is Tammy, if you want to know who the host is. It's going to be at the Goodie Basket here in Fort Smith. I'm not particularly sure where that is, but I'm sure a Google search will let you find it on the maps. Or you can get a hold of Jackie too, Jacqueline, 479-719-0952. That's her number. After that, there's another one coming up on the 16th. These two we've announced before, I think. There's going to be an Essential Oil 101 again, but it's going to be just a 101 class, not a necessarily life-empowered specific focus class. And it's also going to be with Jacqueline Spain, but this one's going to be over in the Poto area if you want to go over there, or if you know someone over there that's already in, this might be a way for them to kind of network with other people that are using essential oils. So you can send them there. Contact Jackie for information because this is more of a personal class, so it's an RSVP. After that, there is the one on the 16th that's happening in the evening. The one on the 14th, pardon me, I didn't tell you the time, is going to be at 2. The one we just talked about in Poto will be from about 1 to 2:30-ish. So you can contact her about that one. There's going to be one in Fort Smith, Essential Oil Scents for the Heart. It's going to be with Jacqueline Spain and Teresa Levesque. She runs another business called At Girl Friday. If you want to find her on Facebook, that'd be a good way. It's going to be at The Mansion in Fort Smith. So contact them for more information on where The Mansion is. And then the day after that is the 17th. And it's going to be a day where we have a New Year, New You class there at the Egg and I in Fort Smith. It's going to be the 17th. It goes from 11 to about 2 o'clock. And I'll be there for most of the time. And that's it for this month that I have information on that is not the Eden Wellness Alliance. Now let's talk about the Eden Wellness Alliance. Because I want to go ahead and give you guys our events that we're having before we dive into the article. We have upcoming on the 14th, like we talked about. It's going to be from about 10:30 really, but 10 to 12. There at the Fort Smith Library. It's going to be a goal workshop. It's just goal with exclamation point workshop there at the library. And what we're going to do with this one is not a particular class about setting goals, but rather you bring a goal that you want to do, since everybody makes resolutions this time of year anyway. You bring a goal that you want to work on, and then we'll be there to help you kind of readjust, focus, counsel you on it, tell you, what are you really wanting with this? How are you really wanting to accomplish this? Action steps that can be taken, not just the what you're wanting, but the how and the why. Get a bit more focus in this class. So hopefully that'll be some fun. That'll actually be like a workshop. Bring your pencils, bring your paper, bring a pen, stuff like that. Bring stuff to do and take notes and diagram, whatever you want to do on what you're wanting to work on. To run through the other ones that we're having the rest of the year, in February, we're going to have a couples footsie time. In March, we're going to have Emergency Preparedness the Healthy Way. This is just going to be the one class. It's not the series class that we do that's more in depth. It's the single class where we go through the CDC recommendations, and then we tell you what we encourage you to have along with that, those type of recommendations for basic preparedness, like 0-level preparedness. April, we're going to do a class we're going to call Seasons Cleanings. Your body cleans out in spring and in fall. It cleans that gunk out of your system. A lot of people who don't actually have allergies, they just are getting rid of that gunk out of their system that's built up over the winter, or in the fall, built up over the summer. So we'll discuss that, we'll talk about it, and we'll give people recommendations and counseling and encouragements on different modes and ways to assist that process that is not nearly as problematic as it could be. In May, we're going to do one on gut health. It was requested, so it's going to be done in May. If you have gut issues or gut things, things with digestive problems, and we won't just talk about the problems, we'll talk about how important your guts are, how important your gut health is. June is a neat class. It's the first time we've done this type of class. It's called The Genetic Edit, and it's going to be a class about your genetics and how genetics are actually things that you don't have to, you're not a slave to your genetics. Your genetics are not set in stone. They change. You edit your genetic expression by the way you think, feel, act, do. Your environment changes it edits your genetics, and that includes all of your environment, including your internal one, your mental one, your physical one, your spiritual one, all that type of stuff. So we'll talk about that, and we'll give people suggestions, ideas, and we'll take questions, comments, observations, different things like that at that class about genetics. And someone who's predisposed to certain genetic problems may find this class really beneficial. Health on a Budget is what we're doing in July. That was also a requested one, which should be fun, should be interesting. It is possible to be healthy on a budget, and not a super extravagant one. We're going to do another couples footsie time in August. We're not going to have any planned events in September. We're doing another emergency preparedness in October. And then we're doing another season's cleanings in November for the fall. No events in December because there's already plenty of events for people in December. So hopefully that'll be everything that you guys can not fill your year up with, but kind of plan for. And you can keep up with the Facebook page if you want to have more details on those different classes and stuff, because we are definitely going to be letting people know what we're doing and when we have those classes. So that's all for events and such. And like I said, we have a pretty big schedule for today. A pretty intense article, not necessarily big, but intense article, good article. It was found by Teresa Levesque from the Ad Girl Friday. She's helping us with our social media, so hopefully we'll be getting a bit more of exposure. You may see us a bit more in your feeds, hopefully. And we are going to be going over I'll pull up the article. It's called A Chemistry of Life is what the article's called, and it's from LiveScience, I believe. Yes, LiveScience. And if you want, you can find the article link down in the doobly-doo. I'm not going to do a screen share of the article this time because I've got a second monitor that I'm going to be putting here in the office that hopefully I'll be able to do that in the future. where we can have a better picture than we did the other time. But diving right in, this is from back in 2009, so it's not a recent article, but it's the information in it doesn't really change all that much, so it's a good article. Yes. There we are. The article is called "The Chemistry of Life, the Human Body." It's by Michael Schirber. Schirber. And it goes in and it starts talking about there's like 60 different elements found in the human body. This is not particularly accurate, but the idea is actually if you go to and they kind of mention the periodic table here. If you go into the human body has everything in it that's in the periodic table. Even new things, because scientists discover new things on the periodic table that we didn't know about before, but they were always in the human system anyway. It's interesting that sometimes humans will think they have something figured out, and then they'll find out God put something there already that we didn't even know about. And we'll think we discovered something when actually it was there the whole time. Kind of like discovering America. No one discovered... You can discover something, but you can't invent or create America or anything like that, the Americas or such. But anyway, that little tangent aside, it talks about how the nutrients are fundamental and necessary for the performance of different things. They mentioned building of bones and cell structures, regarding regulating the body's pH, changing the charge in the nerves and such like that, and driving the chemical reactions thereof and different chemical reactions within the system, period. One thing we can quote that I found was good was the FDA has set a reference daily intake for 12 minerals, just 12 out of those 60 that it mentioned: calcium, iron, phosphorus, iodine, magnesium, zinc, selenium, copper, manganese, chromium. It's not always easy to say these. Molybdenum, whatever it is, and chloride. Sodium and potassium also have recommended levels, but they are treated separately. And I like how it says, however, this does not exhaust the list of elements that you need. Sulfur is not usually mentioned as a dietary supplement because the body gets plenty of it in proteins. And it talks more about that. Mentions briefly silicon, boron, nickel, vanadium, and lead. You actually need lead in your system, a little bit of it. We'll touch on that in a moment. And they play a biological role in your system. They're meant to be in there. A quote from Linus Pauling, a quote from Victoria Drake, the Linus Pauling Institute of Oregon State University, says, this may be due to the fact that a biochemical function has not been defined by experimental evidence regarding those other minerals being a lack of being mentioned. So if you want the whole thing, you can read it for yourself. We want to get into the idea of what are these other things that we might touch on. And it goes and it lists off several of them. Let me see, how many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Mentions 20. So we're going to touch on each of those briefly as time allows. So the first one, it gets down to this list in the article, and then it starts listing them off. First one they mention is oxygen, 65%, and hydrogen, 10% of what you're kind of talking about here for your system. It gives it the body weight percentage of body weight in parentheses, it says, with a quick rundown. Are predominantly found in water, of course, which makes up about 60% of the body by weight. It's practically impossible to imagine life without water, and indeed it is. Water is probably the most important substance you intake aside from air, which is also containing oxygen and hydrogen and so on. So we are chronically addicted to air. We literally die without air and water. So oxygen and hydrogen. Carbon, 18%. You actually kind of need some carbon. It's synonymous with life. We are a carbon-based life form. This central role is due to the fact that it has 4 bonding sites that allow for the building of long, complex chains of molecules. However, carbon bonds can be formed and broken with a modest amount of energy, allowing for the dynamic organic chemistry that goes on in our cells. So, all these things we're listing off, carbon helps all of those bind and unbind and get rearranged and so on. There's talk about people talk about other life forms, and they always say carbon-based life forms when they're trying to relate certain things about their beliefs on different forms of life. We are a carbon-based life form. Without carbon, our body won't function because it can't do those chemical reactions. Nitrogen, you actually can get those from the air, and it's important for us. You get them from other things, but it's important. Let me see. Is found in many organic molecules, including the amino acids that make up proteins and the nucleic acids that make up DNA. DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. So deoxyribonucleic, and then the N is nucleic acid. There's also something called RNA, which is just ribonucleic acid, but it associates with your DNA. So, and for your genetic print-offs, you might think your genetic code right. But you need nitrogen to help maintain those acids. Calcium is mentioned next at 1.5%. The nitrogen was 3%. 1.5% for the calcium. It's the most common mineral in the human body. That's because our bones and teeth are made of it. Ironically, it says calcium's most important role in the body functions, such as in body. Ironically, calcium's most important role is in bodily functions such as muscle contractions and protein regulation. A lot of people don't realize this. It also helps with your pH levels. Calcium is one of the go-to minerals for your blood to regulate its pH level. A lot of people have problems with osteoporosis and stuff like that because their body's using that calcium that's supposed to be in their bones to regulate their over-acid system. Putting stuff into your body that acidifies you causes your body to have to rebalance that out, and calcium is, like I said, the go-to mineral for that. That's why it's so easily lost when you start to get high acid in your body. Next, I mentioned phosphorus at 1% of the body weight, and is found predominantly in bone, but also in the molecule ATP, which provides energy in cells for driving chemical reactions. Now, ATP, when you see that in a health sentence, the molecule ATP is basically what all of your body runs on as far as energy. You take sugar, but you make ATP with it. Your body makes ATP. That is its usable form of energy. Very few things happen in the body without ATP. If we had a house, if our body was a house, it'd be an electric house. It's an electric stove with an electric refrigerator, an electric this and electric that. ATP is the electricity. Potassium is next. So phosphorus is important for ATP and energy. Potassium, 0.25% of the body weight, is an important electrolyte, of course, meaning it carries a charge in a solution. That's a big deal. They mention it helps regulate the heartbeat and is vital for electrical signaling in nerves. And it is. And that idea of the potassium, we a lot of the times will talk about potassium when we're talking about bananas and stuff like that for people that are wanting to get potassium. But we forget that it's an electrolyte for your entire system. All of your nerves benefit from having appropriate levels of potassium. And just a side note, because your body is not a isolated system, it is a dynamic system that has all different types of chemical reactions happening at the same time. A loss of potassium, you usually have lost quite a bit of calcium too, or you're going to have other things out of balance. So just taking one potassium pill probably won't address what's going on with the rest of your system and why your potassium is low in the first place. Just replacing something that's low is not always the ideal thing to do when you are talking about understanding your electrolytes and understanding the chemistry of your system. So be aware of that. Just because you think you're low on one of these things doesn't mean you should go out and just buy the nearest bottle of potassium from a Walmart or a Costco or Sam's or whatever you got near you. You want to make sure that you actually talk with someone who knows about this and can test and look and see what's going on with it. Sulfur is the next one mentioned at 0.25% and is found in 2 amino acids that are important for giving proteins their shape. A misshapen protein, what that means in kind of basic terms, your cells, they're made of proteins. They're made of links of proteins. It's not talking about just the protein that you get from your steak. It's talking about all proteins. Those proteins that make up that cell wall, just giving our example here, they need to have a proper shape or they won't pass through the veins correctly. If we're talking about blood cells, won't form skin appropriately if they are skin cells and epidermal cells. But also, a misshapen protein can lead to mutations. We know that mutations are what cancer is. Cancer is a mutation and then malfunctioning of the system. And if those proteins, the more you have problems with your proteins, the more you're going to have problems with that. And there's so it's important to have appropriate amounts of those minerals in your system. Chloride at 0.15% again. Oh, I missed sodium. Sodium is 0.15%. Is another electrolyte. What else do they say? Nerves. Regulates the amount of water in the body. So it's funny that we talk about sodium because sodium is like salt. That's how most of us think of sodium. But it's not like table salt. That's a high dose of sodium, technically. It's talking about just your sodium you find in the ground type sodium. Or sodium you actually get from the sea type sodium. We're not talking about sodium that has been brought down to its, and just massive amounts of it at one time. Just because you think you're low in sodium doesn't mean you should go out and take some. In fact, the average, especially American diet, has way more sodium than it actually needs. I can count on my hand how many times I add salt to something in a given year, because we get so much sodium anyway from our just diets. So it's usually not something that has to be it's usually something that does not have to be supplemented unless the sodium you're getting is a sodium that cannot be broken down by the system very easily, like if it's bonded with something else. Like sodium and iodine, or ionized sea salt is usually something that's talked about, or iodinized salt. So you get iodine with your salt. That is both good in some respects and bad in some respects, because those bondings they can occur in nature, but they're not necessarily occurring in nature in the amounts that they're talking about with a spoonful of ionized sea salt. So you want to adjust that sometimes. You want to look at that and think about it when you're thinking about your diet, and just decide, well, maybe I should go and see if there's other things I can do to improve the flavor of this besides adding just salt. Chlorine, like we talked about, is 0.15%, usually found in the body as a negative ion. That does not mean bad ion, it just means a negatively charged ion called chloride. The electrolyte is important for maintaining normal balance of fluids, so it works with sodium. Now, sodium and sodium chloride going together, not always what you want to happen at the same time. Not always something you don't want to have happen. Your body has spaces where it needs both at the same time. So it's one of those that needs balanced with each other. They are both at 15% for a reason. Magnesium, 0.05%. And you're seeing these numbers gradually go down, but that does not mean that those smaller numbers are not important. In fact, those smaller numbers are usually the ones you want to keep in balance quite a bit. Magnesium plays an important role in structure of the skeleton and muscles. They estimate on here that it's necessary for somewhere around 300 essential metabolic reactions. Magnesium is important. It's at 0.05%, but it's important. So you're seeing that just because something is low in the number that your body weight percentage doesn't mean you don't need it. Magnesium is incredibly important. Like it says, skeleton and muscles need this. If you are someone who's exercising, you need to make sure you're getting proper amounts of magnesium, because your body is going to need that. Iron, it's even lower at 0.006% of your body weight average. We all know that iron is important for us. You need it for hemoglobin. You need it because it's the oxygen carrier in your hemoglobin of your red blood cells. And it mentions here half of women don't get enough iron in their diet. This is important. And we're not talking about, well, you have to eat meat to get iron. You don't have to eat meat to get iron, but it is very readily accessible, because that's where you're storing a lot of your iron, is in your meat. But you need to get that iron. You need to maintain that 6%, within your body's regulations. You need to get that. Fluoride, 0.0037%, and is found in teeth and bones for structural integrity. Outside of preventing tooth decay, it does not appear to have any importance to daily health. Now, that's them saying that. That's not me saying that. I'm of the opinion that, like this fluoride toothpaste, for example. Fluoride toothpaste it's a fine idea. I mean, it's a fine idea, but the method in which the fluoride is administered doesn't really get done what they're wanting to have done. You see, the fluoride that they're using is a synthesized fluoride. They've harvested basically from other portions, from other places where fluoride is very prominent, and that gets into your system, and your body absorbs that high fluoride. That it's not false fluoride, it's not fake fluoride, but it is really potent fluoride. I don't use fluorinated toothpaste for that reason. You can use it if you want to, it's your decision. But fluoride, especially like in drinking of water, the problem with drinking fluoride is because the fluoride they're adding, like we talked about, is that different kind of structure to it. It has a different structure. That's what I'm looking for. It has a different kind of arrangement in its molecules. It's still fluoride, but it's not the same fluoride that your body gets from something like broccoli or cauliflower or those cruciferous vegetables. Those have lots of fluoride. Spinach has a good amount of fluoride, if I remember right. And when you digest the fluoride with your food, it's much different than when you put fluoride into you with just in your water or with brushing your teeth or stuff like that, because the fluoride has not been processed and broken down in the same way. It is just big fluoride. It is not colloidal fluoride. And that's a big deal when we're talking about all of these minerals and all of these substances. Are they colloidal? Can they pass through the blood-brain barrier? Because these minerals are supposed to pass through the blood-brain barrier. Your brain needs them. Not to spend too much time on that. It can have its own question and answer thing. Let me see. Zinc is next. Zinc is at 0.0032% and is an essential trace element for all forms of life. You have to have zinc. Several proteins contain structures called the zinc fingers, help regulate their genes. So see, the genus. Blah. Zinc deficiency has been known to lead to dwarfism in developing countries for over long terms. Of course, you can't just be born normal height and then become dwarf because you lose zinc. It's talking about birth rates. But zinc is actually really important, not just for that. Men really need to make sure that they control their amount of zinc, and really because of the way we're eating and what we're getting in our foods hormonally, it's important for women to get a good source of appropriate zinc also, because zinc is a big contributor to the development and regulation of testosterone. Over testosterone in women, well, we don't want that, and under testosterone in men, you're not going to want that, because both of those imbalances are going to cause imbalance in the system. So zinc is a way to nutritionally help with those areas. It can also help because of it helping with regulating those hormones and synthesizing and appropriate use of those hormones. Your body can then have a better setup emotionally. So it has long-reaching effects. All of these have long-reaching effects down the cascading line of chemical reactions in your system. Copper is the one they mention next. So you've got copper-blooded. Copper 0.0001%. It's an electron donor, which means it's going to be important for those biological reactions of your neuron, for lots of biological reactions. But without copper, you can't use iron properly. Your body doesn't use iron effectively without copper, because it's got to have that exchange. And a lot of the times you'll have to donate, like it talks about, that electron and change its form. But there's a reason we use things like copper wire. It's a good conductor. Your nerves benefit from copper as well, and those reactions. Iodine, like we mentioned before, 0.000016%. Now you see how the problem might come in when you're having ionized sodium or ionized what they call salt. They don't come in the same ratio. They don't belong in the same ratio. So it's required for your thyroid hormones, and really that's when you get most of your talk about supplementing iodine is for your thyroid health. It helps with other cellular functions too, but it can lead, like a deficiency it mentions here, it can lead to goiter, brain damage, etc., and stuff like that. And that's been documented in different areas of the world too. And when you're thinking about your iodine, remember that ionized sea salt, it helps people with goiters, but then that sodium's going to unbalance something else. It's going to, having that much sodium coming in and not properly organized with the iodine can be problematic. So what I'm really saying here is don't go trying to regulate this without some better understanding and education. If you've got the better understanding and education, by all means, do your own thing. But you can really mess with yourself by over or under doing this by a perceived problem that actually comes from somewhere else, not that particular mineral. Selenium, it is 0.000019%. It's essential for certain enzymes and antioxidants. It mentions here, unlike animals, plants do not appear to require selenium for survival, but they do absorb it. So there are several cases of selenium poisoning from eating plants grown in selenium-rich soils. That's interesting to know, because you only need so much selenium, but you do need some, and you need appropriate amounts. That's interesting because if you have selenium-rich soil, you can get those. Remember how we talked about colloidal? We mentioned the word colloidal. Colloidal means it can pass cellular barriers much more easily, and can pass through the blood-brain barrier more often than not. That means that the selenium, because these vegetables were so rich in selenium, I assume they were vegetables in this case. They were able to get that selenium into a colloidal form, and it got too much in the system. So that, you see, you can get too much from even just plants, which are actually much better for you. So really, moderation and balance is what we're talking about here with these. Chromium is 0.0000024%. I think I got all those zeros. But it's really small. And essentially, it's very helpful for, let me see what they mention, regulate sugar levels when interacting with insulin. But the exact mechanism is not completely understood. See, more to learn. But chromium is actually pretty handy. You need chrome on your insides, I guess you might say. But don't go eating chrome. That's not the point. That's not the idea. In that sense, we definitely don't want people to do that. But you do need some chromium, and you need chromium that's going to be, like we talked about, absorbable. With it affecting the insulin, diabetics would be quite helped with a better understanding of that. I believe there's some studies that have tried to link chromium in some form or fashion, as a nutritional deficit, to malfunctioning isles of, what was that? It's blanking from my head right now. Someone in the comments can say, in the pancreas, the isles of Langerhans, is that it? I'd have to come back to that. In the comments, tell me. Next, manganese, 0.000017%, is essential for certain enzymes, particularly those of mitochondria. Now, mitochondria are those that generate energy in your cell. They mention that too. And that sentence doesn't make quite sense. Let me see if I read it. It makes sense. Is essential for certain enzymes, in particular those that protect mitochondria, the place where usable energy is generated inside cells from dangerous antioxidants. So they protect the cell from dangerous antioxidants. Manganese is, if it's protecting one type of cell, remember that it's going to be beneficial for other types of cells for protection. And all cells that you're talking about in general have those mitochondria. They have to have them. They're the power factories of the cell. If you lose your mitochondria or they start to malfunction, that causes mutation. Mutation can cause lots of problems in the system. Proper manganese. Molybdenum. I still trying to wrap my head around that pronunciation. I should probably look it up. You know what that's what I should do? I should look it up. If someone looks it up before I get to correct myself, then you can post it in the link to the definition in the comments for me. Or at least the pronunciation. Pronunciation. Molybdenum. molybdenum is essential to virtually all life forms. In humans, it's important for transforming sulfur into a usable form. In nitrogen-fixing bacteria, it is important for transforming nitrogen into a usable form. Now, this is interesting because it's talking about interaction here with bacteria. That's something we haven't touched on yet in this article, is the interaction between not just your body and its molecules and its cells, but what about those cells that are living within you that aren't technically your cells, like the bacteria in your stomach? Those are technically their own beings, they're their own cells, but they have to be their own cells because they're bacteria. They're not necessarily something that you made. And you want to make sure that they're healthy. Like when you take an antibiotic, you're killing off not just those bad stuff, but you're killing off that good stuff in your gut too. You need to make sure that you end up replacing those things, or your digestion's just going to suffer. So that one, I won't even try to say it again, that one is 0.000013% of body weight. Cobalt is the next one. It's at 0.000021%. Is contained in vitamin B12, is important in a protein formation and DNA regulation. So, and that's true for anything that helps with your B12s. Even iron and copper help the usefulness of the B vitamins, and the B vitamins depend on them to be absorbed. So it's something that you definitely want to look at if you're having problems with absorption. You want to look at something for that and understanding your chemical balance. If you don't come to us, at least talk to your doctor, your GP, about maybe getting a blood test that kind of looks at how your chemistry's going, because that actually can give you a lot of information. And if you start to understand your own blood tests and your own health, then you'll be a lot better off. But cobalt is what we talked about here, helping with that B12. And again, it's not very big in the system. You don't need a lot of it, but you need it. You need it. And when it comes to these type of minerals and these type of trace minerals, sometimes they're called, you just don't get them in your diets like you used to. In America, you used to get them in your diets pretty easily. But the more we started commercial farming and less farming with ourselves, we kind of lost those because it was more important to produce a lot than to produce a quality. And that's not really what your body wants. It wants quality over quantity. And your body would really prefer to have quality over quantity. You'll notice if you do start editing your dietary habits with things that are more appropriately grown and not over commercialized. There's a certain amount of commercialization that's okay. Good things have come from that. But if you find as close to raw and natural as you can get, then you're going to be able to have a better absorption of those. And you may find that they have better amounts in certain things. So that comes around to the idea that we use these with our clients. Trace minerals, we get these, they're in a colloidal suspension, which is why we like them. And they are from Motor Health Systems, which is where we get them. So you can get them from them or from us, either way. If you're a client, I suggest you get them from us simply because we can help. We work with people on certain things in that general idea. But, in that general area. But, we've gone pretty well close to time. I try to make this about 30 minutes, so we've gone pretty well close to time today. Hopefully, this will encourage people to either look into some trace minerals for themselves, but you want to make sure you're getting good trace minerals and not just minerals that have been mixed together after the fact. Another reason I like those is all those minerals are in one source. They're from one source. They're from a fossilized plant strata. They pass through that and they filter through that, and then what comes out is that trace mineral. So, is that trace mineral mixture that's naturally mixed. And by that I mean those are the minerals that plant absorbed thousands of years ago when it was still alive and growing and not like under the flood. So go ahead and look into those different things. You can look into different health options. You are your own person. I am not your doctor. I am just a person who does health things for a living, runs a PMA, and has given an opinion. As my opinion. It is not binding on anything. For anyone from the FDA watching, I do not treat. What was that phrase? I'm not imposing on anybody as a doctor, but if you want to come to us and get some health information and understanding, please do that. You can get with us through Facebook, YouTube. You can send us something on Twitter. I don't engage much there, but it is not where we are most active. We are most active on Facebook, but you can contact me there. Email us at adam.theedenwellnessalliance.com or just adam.theeden@gmail.com. Either one works. You got all the contact information over here. Why am I even saying that? You guys got all the contact information over here on this side. So there you go. That's why I put it there, if I were to remember what I had done. I am Adam L. Spain with the Eden Wellness Alliance. Health and wellness the way God intended. Hopefully you had a great time. We will see you next time. And have a great day. God bless and enjoy.